You knew the risks when you decided to drive drunk. There could be a crash. People could get hurt or killed. But that didn't stop you, did it? You knew you could get arrested. You could incur huge legal expenses, and you could possibly even lose your job. You were well aware of the consequences of driving drunk. But one thing's for sure. You were wrong when you said it was no big deal. Drive sober or get pulled over. This message brought to you by NHTSA.
This is information not being reported by anyone else. You want the scoop? Here it is with Darren Doogie Wolfson.
It definitely is a manic Monday, but also a fun day. Yes, the two can coexist. It is Scoop Podcast episode 170 being recorded on Monday evening, the 27th of August. And a new Scoop Podcast means, yes, it can be a fun day. I always enjoy bringing you the latest on the local sports front. We'll get to Wolves Pobo / Coach Tom Thibodeau in just a bit. We also need to give some love to the latest new sponsor of the Scoop Podcast. It is MyBookie. I'll tell you all about MyBookie after we chat with Tim Bergsma. He is the managing director of NeuroSpeak Pro. Him and his partner, Dr. Royer, have worked with Vikings quarterback Kirk Cousins for some time now. He can take us through how long they are all about optimizing human performance. So whether it's sleep, vision, testosterone levels, he can take us through everything that they work with Kirk on. But I figured, hey, it's something different. I know that Dr. Royer came up in a recent news conference with Kirk Cousins. There's been a little blurb written in an SI story going back a year or two, a little in a blurb in a GQ story about Cousins, but figured, hey, we can get to know the human optimizing team behind Vikings quarterback Kirk Cousins. So let's catch up with Tim Bergsma. Tim, thank you for joining the Scoop Podcast. In the open, I laid out that you and your partner have a long-standing relationship with Kirk Cousins, but why don't you lay out to me, to the listeners, how far back that relationship goes, how long you have known Kirk Cousins?
Yeah, absolutely. So Kirk has been doing a lot of work with primarily Dr. Royer, who is my business partner, and Dr. Royer actually started working with Kirk back when Kirk was at Michigan State still. And they talked about some goals that Kirk had, laid those out, and got to work on strengthening his brain, strengthening his autonomic nervous system so that he could, handle the pressures of, at the time, college Big Ten football. And then ultimately, as he went into the NFL, became a starter, then kind of became the man. Dr. Royer and we at NeuroSpeak Pro have partnered with him in that, and he gets all of the credit because of all of the hard work he's put in. But we've been honored to be a part of that journey and helped in the small ways that we can.
I'm curious. I mean, we'll get to what you guys do when you connect with him, in person or via Skype, whatever, FaceTime. But I'm curious about how the relationship evolved even more. I mean, was it his dad, Don? Was it somebody with the Michigan State staff? I mean, did he take it upon himself to seek you guys out? I'm curious. I mean, what year was it? 2011 that you guys first connected?
Yeah, it's actually kind of funny. It all started with Dr. Royer giving a lecture in Grand Rapids, Michigan, which is a town on the west side of Michigan that's actually probably about 20 minutes from where Kirk grew up.
Sure, yeah.
And Kirk's brother, Kyle, happened to go.
Okay.
And, afterwards, the primary focus of the lecture was kids with ADHD and people with attention problems and some of these clinical issues. And, the conversation kind of started with, Dr. Royer, if you can help take these kids who are on 2-3 medicines and focusing at the 20th percentile to the point where they can focus in the 75th or 80th percentile, and many of them wean off their medicines, could you take my brother and ultimately Kirk, could you take me to, I'm already in the top couple percentile, but I want to be on the pinnacle of performance. Can you take me there?
That is, I'm telling you, I mean, Tim, that is fascinating to me. Was Kirk on board right away? Did he embrace what you and Dr. Royer, your partner, were all about? I mean, did he get what optimizing human performance was all about?
Yeah, so it's always a learning curve for anybody, right? There's a ton of education when it comes to understanding how the brain works, how the body works, and what the different levels of the brain look like. But Kirk is an incredibly intelligent and incredibly hardworking individual. You won't meet a smarter, nicer, harder working guy out there. And so Dr. Royer from day one said, okay, if we want to do this, here's your homework. You need to do these 10 things before we meet again next week. And the following week, Dr. Royer meets with them, and he goes, did you do the 10 things? He goes, I actually did those 10 things twice. I did 20 things. And, you asked me to get in 3 sessions. I got in 6 sessions. You asked me to read the first part of this book. I read the entire book. So while everybody goes through the learning process, Kirk really dove in because he wanted to understand it and really so that he could internalize and have that intrinsic motivation in order to get better and in order to train, in order to get to that top percentile that he has achieved.
Did you guys see that specialness about him, all those special qualities, hardworking, his smarts? Did you guys recognize that right away?
I mean, yeah, there's no hiding it when it comes to Kirk. If you have conversations with him, he is articulate, he is thoughtful, he is, just very well-spoken. And it goes beyond that with him. Beyond the intelligence is just the type of human he is. If he meets you one time and you mention that you have, a kid who's 6 months later when he talks to you, he's going to ask how kindergarten's going for your child.
Yeah.
He's just that kind of person. Certainly a memory and a brain that is incredibly intelligent, and then he works hard to make the most out of it.
So, I mean, how much fun is it for you, for your partner, Dr. Royer, to work with him when he's so much on board, when he's so intelligent?
Yeah, it's fantastic because you only have to tell him things once, and you only have to explain things once, and he knows just as much as a lot of our staff do when it comes to training and how the brain, how the body works, because one, it for 6-7 years now, he's been using the neurofeedback technology. He's been engaging with NeuroPeak Pro and our technicians and all of our different training. And it's a blast, and it's a lot of fun to see that pay off for him and for him to find that success, because he's a guy that's so easy to root for. That he is so hard work. He is doing all the right things. It's you love seeing that payoff because there's a lot of factors at play.
Tim, take us through a normal session with Kirk. Are you flying into town here often, the Twin Cities? Is Dr. Royer flying into town, or do you guys do it via, whether it's Skype or some other means of technology?
Yeah, so it's a little mix of both. Dr. Royer and him connect all the time, but the main bit of training that he does, and he's talked about this on a couple different magazine articles. If you actually look there's an article that he did in GQ.
I did see that,
where there's actually an image of him hooked up to our equipment.
Mm-hmm.
And he has gotten so good that he has become his own technician. He knows how to hook his own brain up. He knows what the different impedance and interference levels need to be, the thresholds for a good connection. And then the beauty of a lot of the training that we do is it's all about the brain-computer interface. It's not so much the magic of what I say or I can do, or one of our technicians, or what Dr. Royer says and what he can do, but it's that brain interfacing with the technology at the firing of the electrical frequencies and of the actual core of the brains. And we could get into how that science works. We could talk for hours about that, but that's where the beauty lies, where that technology is meeting his brain exactly where it is and giving it positive and negative reinforcement that are going to decrease the brainwaves associated with stress and anxiety, increase the brainwaves that are associated with calm, creative focus, increase the brainwaves that are associated with recovery. And it is doing that. The computer and the brain are having that back and forth, are having that conversation. So a lot of times he doesn't need us there. He has a unit that he can run in his home, and we offer support throughout the way. But he's so good at the technology that he can hook up and, daily run sessions and see his brain get stronger.
All right, Tim, so take us through what he's doing with his brain, how it directly translates to the football field. Like, are there certain plays that you can picture from last year or the year before, throws he made as a Washington Redskin where that his brain was processing things a certain way, and because of the work you do with him, or maybe it's as simple as, the work that you do with him certainly helped. I mean, ultimately, he still made that decision, that throw, whatever it might be. But are there specific examples you can cite, Tim, where you know that the work you're doing has a direct relation to the success he has on the football field?
Absolutely. You hate to take credit for Kirk being awesome at what he does. So I do want to be a little bit careful of that because he is responsible for, his success. Kirk's success is because of Kirk.
Sure.
And, the hard work he puts in. There are some things that we need to keep proprietary because they are, some of his personal information, but there are definitely things that we work on with him to handle pressure situations because he is a good quarterback. And, there are people around, in any field of practice, whether it's a business person or a NBA player or a quarterback or a golfer or whatever, that they are really, really good at what they do. What our training does is it helps unleash that no matter what the environment is. Well, a lot of players, a lot of athletes, we see that in pressure situations, they might kind of, their performance is impacted negatively. The pressure gets on the line and all of a sudden we see mistakes. Why? Because their brain and their body are starting to react not in a performance setting, but in a stress setting. And they're not reacting like they should. Like, what's important when Kirk takes the snap is that he reads this defense and that he makes that right play. But what can happen and what oftentimes we have the propensity to happen when the pressure is on, it's no longer about reading the defense. It's about, oh, shoot, it's fourth down. What about last time? What about last week? Hey, what about the fact that I signed this big contract? What if I make a mistake here? What if I, throw an interception? And those are all different things, whether it's conscious thought or subconscious thought, that get in the way of the actual action of performance. And what our training does is it helps eliminate that. It helps train the brain to operate the optimal reaction to the actual circumstance. So that is where we see, guys like Kirk and specifically Kirk, where when they're able to perform under pressure and when they're able to handle more and more pressure and their performance not waver or even in some senses get better under those high levels of pressure, that's when we know that their brain and body are exactly where we want them to be. And, yeah, our training does play a part in that.
Is his brain and body where you want it to be as he heads into this first season with the Vikings? I mean, you briefly touched on it, Tim, the big contract. I mean, heck, there's all sorts of pressure when you're the quarterback of the Washington Redskins, when you're playing on a year-to-year contract. I mean, he dealt with a ton of pressure, but this is a different animal now here in Minnesota with the big contract, with big expectations. I mean, he's no longer the underdog. He's made it. How is he dealing with those expectations, that different type of pressure?
Yeah, the goal is that doesn't come into play. The goal is that he performs at his best, whether he is going into the Big Ten season at Michigan State or whether he's the backup quarterback at the Washington Redskins or he's the guy in Minnesota. Performance happens when he can get that ball in his hands, read the defense, and execute a play. And so, all of that is secondary. And, what our training is looking to do and what he's worked at for the last 7 years is for those facts to become irrelevant when he gets the snap.
How important is sleep and maximizing his sleep, sleeping the right way, getting the most out of his sleep? How important is sleep to Cousins' success, and how involved are you guys with his sleep and his sleep patterns?
Oh, sleep is vital. Sleep is absolutely imperative to performance, and that's whether you're a teacher or a business person or a salesperson or an NFL quarterback. Sleep is paramount because what happens in sleep, and sleep is such a bad word for what we do at night. It's like we would never say, oh, I'm awake during the day. You would say, oh, I went to work and then I went home to my family. Well, during sleep, there's all these different stages of sleep, from deep sleep where body recovery happens and testosterone is regulated and human growth hormone is developed, all these things that happen during deep sleep. And then REM sleep, where memory is consolidated, problem solving occurs, and all this brain functioning happens. And when you look at an NFL quarterback, both of those are vital. If his testosterone tanks or his human growth hormone is inhibited because he's not getting that deep sleep, or if his brain recovery is inhibited and he's unable to consolidate memories and he has that added stress to the brain, those things are going to diminish performance so quickly. And so sleep is valued super highly. And, Kirk, as he's become more and more educated on the importance of sleep, has started to take a lot of care into that, because, there's only so much that taking more reps on the practice field can do if your brain and body aren't there. And he has done a great job of protecting his sleep, of valuing his sleep, and assessing his sleep. He knows when he needs to protect it a little extra. He knows when, he's in a really good spot because he's utilized some of the technology that we have to measure that and to continually track that, because he understands how important it is to performance.
What is that technology that you use with him?
Yeah, so we have, one of the things we have is a mobile polysomnograph, for lack of a better term, where it goes kind of far beyond just the wearable, where that's tracking the movement of your wrist, or might be tracking heart rate, but it's actually all-night EEG, where we can track and norm against an age norm database, where we can say, for your age and for your situation, this is where you're sleeping. From a percent of REM, a percent of deep sleep, a total REM. There's about 20-some key sleep indicators. They're almost KPIs for sleep of what we want to see in sleep. And we know, are you getting enough deep sleep? Are you getting enough REM sleep? Is it exactly where it needs to be? Or is it off a little bit? And we know if it is off, here's what we need to do. We need to double down on some of the brain training. We need to maybe the efficiency isn't there, so that we need to value the time in bed. And instead of getting 7.5, 8 hours, we need to figure out a way to budget 9 hours to be in bed, because we know how important that is.
Are you guys also involved on the nutrition side?
Yeah, so Kirk does a lot with nutrition, and we are a little bit involved in that, although he has got a couple other guys. I know he works with an applied kinesiologist who is really, really skilled in that front. But, I don't think there is a thing that you will ask me about that Kirk isn't disciplined on.
Tim, it's unbelievable. Like, I don't know. And heck, I read more than most, but like a lot of people listening right now, I have to imagine, have no idea everything that goes into a quarterback, specifically Kirk Cousins, trying to make sure that he's in the best position possible to play at the highest possible level.
Absolutely. And there's more than I think even we understand, or that Kirk might even realize, all that he's done over the last decade plus, really probably 20-some years, to prepare himself for this. It's not, we see Sundays, right? And we see a couple plays and we can tag him as a hero or a GOAT or whatever based on a few plays for that week. But it's true that there is probably, for every throw, there has been countless of hours of preparation to put himself in that best possible scenario to succeed. 100%. I couldn't agree more on that.
You guys do measure his testosterone levels?
We do. And, obviously that stuff is very private, and we're not going to talk about what those are. But, because that's huge with performance, right? It's all linked. And the more we realize that there are those links between the brain, the cardiovascular system, the respiratory system, the endocrine system, every organ of our body is linked and either pushes us towards performance or pushes us away from performance. And that's a huge indicator. I mean, we run a lot of hormone samples across many sports, and when testosterone especially decreases, performance, number one, goes down, but also propensity for injury goes up. So that's huge. That's key.
Tim, I thoroughly enjoyed the conversation. I think you're right. I think I could talk to you if I wanted to for 2, 3, 4 hours, if not days, if not months. I mean, I'm telling you, I've used the word before and I'll use it again. To me, just the brain side of things, the mental side of things for an athlete to optimize his or her performance, to me is it's incredibly fascinating. It really is.
Yeah, and we haven't even scratched the surface. You talk about the brain and the mind and the difference between those two, and some of the stuff we're doing where we're literally interfacing with the electrical firing of the brain, that we could dig into that science and how that can impact anyone. You talk about Kirk, sure, but your listeners where they are, waking up, making sales, being fathers, mothers, employees, bosses, the why, when our brains are where they need to be, we can set ourselves up for performance. And when they're not, that performance hinders no matter what that performance is.
Tim, I greatly enjoyed the conversation, and when you make it here to the Twin Cities, make it here to the Twin Cities again. Let's maybe connect in person.
Sounds good. I look forward to it.
You knew the risks when you decided to drive drunk. There could be a crash. People could get hurt or killed. But that didn't stop you, did it? You knew you could get arrested. You could incur huge legal expenses, and you could possibly even lose your job. You were well aware of the consequences of driving drunk. But one thing's for sure. You were wrong when you said it was no big deal. Drive sober or get pulled over. This message brought to you by NHTSA.
Tim Bergsma, NeuroSpeak Pro Managing Director. Him and his partner, Dr. Royer, go way back with Kirk Cousins, back to when Cousins was the quarterback at Michigan State. They are all about optimizing human performance. He laid out all the areas that they work with Kirk in, and I'm sure some that I didn't even have time to get to. We were at the 20-minute mark or 19-minute mark. I didn't want to keep Tim for too much longer, but to me, that side of things, everything that goes into a quarterback trying to have the most success possible. Doesn't always work, but all the work that goes into a quarterback trying to have the most success possible is it is captivating to me. Hopefully it's captivating to you as well, or maybe a fast forward all the way through to this point to hear Tom Thibodeau in just a second. We'll get to Tibbs in just a second, but let me tell you about the new sponsor of the Scoop Podcast. We are happy to have MyBookie on board. Ever since I started this podcast, people have been asking me for advice going back 2.5 years. Usually it's about fantasy football or who to bet on this week. The truth is, I wish I had all the answers. I certainly don't have all the answers. Sometimes I pretend like I have all the answers. Heck, at home with my wife, I pretend like I have all the answers, but I don't always have all the answers. But if you think you know, you got to check out MyBookie. Remember, who you're betting on is just as important as who you're betting with. That's why I always tell people to bet with MyBookie online, mybookie.com. Trust me, guys, they are your best bet this season. They've been in the business for years. They have great reviews online, and their mobile site is easy to use. I'm telling you, I would only recommend a service to my listeners that's been good to me. It is MyBookie, mybookie.com. That's why I'm urging you to make your way to MyBookie. You win, they pay. They have in-game live betting, the most rewarding player perks in the business. And for you fantasy guys out there, you can even bet the over-under on how many fantasy points a player will score each game. Join now, and MyBookie will match your deposit dollar for dollar. Use the promo code SCOOP to activate the offer. Promo code SCOOP. Visit MyBookie online today, mybookie.com. That's MyBookie.com. And don't forget to use the promo code SCOOP when creating your account to claim the bonus. You play, you win, you get paid. MyBookie, mybookie.com. We'll get to some Vikings notes before Tibbs. What did I jot down? Well, first off, on George Iloka, on Scoop Podcast episode, I think it was 168, I recorded that on a Monday afternoon or Monday evening. I said there was no traction on Iloka whatsoever. When I recorded that, that was true. Everything changed later that night, deep into the night. Iloka was on a plane the next morning at 7 a.m., got up at 5 a.m. to head to the airport, comes here. Really wasn't much of a recruiting pitch. He was willing to take the minimum, $790,000. George Iloka signed here. What I can tell you, though, is it was Mike Zimmer who pushed Iloka forward. Probably not a surprise, but wanted to make sure that I said that. Forgot to mention that on Scoop Podcast, episode 169. Not quite sure the opinion was universal in the front office. Hey, let's sign George Iloka. But Mike Zimmer said, I will use him. He is my guy. I know how good he is. I will find different ways to get him on the field, and we can get him at a very low number, which was true. $790,000 with a $90,000 bonus. Why Iloka chose here over some other teams that called well before the Vikings. Again, the Vikings didn't call until about 48 hours into the process. Was they feel like his camp, the Iloka camp, feels like that they can cash out a year from now, that they don't necessarily think that Andrew Sendejo, will be here in a year, that George Iloka can get paid by the Vikings or somebody else 1 year from now, that to maximize George Iloka's potential and his financial well-being to the fullest extent, that the Vikings was the best possible scenario. So that means that there is a belief from the Iloka camp that he is going to play and play a healthy amount. So it will be interesting to see how the Vikings use Harrison Smith, Andrew Sendejo, and George Iloka on the field at the same time, because make no mistake, even if Sendejo isn't here in a year, the Vikings still think the world of Andrew Sendejo. I know they do. So I don't see Andrew Sendejo going to the bench. I see all three safeties playing at the same time on certain downs. Minimum Chad Beebe, the undrafted wide receiver from Northern Illinois, Don's son, has put himself in a position to be on the practice squad. Who knows? Maybe even the 53-man roster. He has been a star throughout camp and the preseason. Just a quick reminder, the Vikings did not sign him immediately after the draft. So they signed guys like Holton Hill and others, and Mike Boone, for example, others, Rock Thomas. They give these guys, X amount of dollars to sign. Holton Hill, $75,000. Mike Boone, $8,000. What a steal on Mike Boone, by the way, who also had some interest from Denver and others, but the Vikings didn't draft a running back. Mike Boone's camp was smart. They said, hey, Jerick McKinnon's gone. There's a chance to win a running back job there, that you can make the 53-man roster. So who cares if we sign for only $8,000? That's a good opportunity. But anyway, on Beebe, he wasn't signed. He committed to the Vikings rookie camp, then earned his way onto the 90-man roster. The Colts tried to get him in to their rookie camp. It was a week after the Vikings, or 2 weeks after. In fact, the Colts called before the Vikings, but the Vikings camp was before the Colts. He comes here. He impresses during that rookie camp on a tryout basis. The Vikings then sign him to the 90-man roster, and he never made it to Indianapolis to participate in their rookie camp. Chad Beebe, a name to remember. What else did I write down? Kendall Wright, certainly not a lock to make the 53-man roster. On Brett Jones, a big reason why the Giants traded him. They tendered him at a second-round level in the offseason, $2.9 million. The Giants, per NFLPA records, are the only team, it's now past tense, we're the only team with $1 million of cap space or under available. So moving Jones freed up $2.9 million. The Giants were up against it cap-wise, and allegedly they have all sorts of offensive line depth. Hard to believe, but they have that depth. So they took that 7th-round pick next year from the Vikings, and do know that Jones can play left guard. So when Pat Elflein is good to go, I give up. I punt on trying to figure out when exactly Pat will play. At this point, week 1 looks like it's very much up in the air, but Mike Zimmer said the other day that it doesn't look like Pat will start the regular season on the PUP list, so maybe he's back week 2 or week 3. Whenever Elflein is back starting at center, and he's going to start at center when he's healthy, that Jones can play a left guard, so no guarantee that Tom Compton is the starting left guard as we get into the season. I think there's some moving parts still along that offensive line. Trevor Siemian is officially the backup, and Daniel Carlson, unless he goes belly up on Thursday in Nashville against Tennessee, he is the Vikings kicker. I know fans are upset about him missing all those kicks, the 2 kicks, I guess, against Seattle on Friday. But let me remind you that the Vikings moved up to take him in the draft. They thought the Miami Dolphins, who were ahead of them at the time, were going to snipe Carlson. So they moved up. And I can also tell you that not only did the Dolphins have interest in Carlson, New Orleans did, Jacksonville did, and Cincinnati did. So there was a healthy buzz around Carlson that Saturday of the draft. The Vikings felt like, hey, for us to secure his services, we need to move up in the 5th round, and grab him. So once you move up in the draft for a fifth-round guy. You move up, a specialist. He was always going to be the guy. So I'm just telling you, I guess if he misses multiple kicks on Thursday, things could get interesting. But at this point, even after Friday's debacle, missing the 2 42-yard field goals, Daniel Carlson is the Vikings kicker. I can tell you, though, the Forbath camp is still scratching their heads. They were scratching their heads when the Vikings moved up for Carlson. They're scratching their heads even more so now. You think about Kai making that big kick in the New Orleans playoff game, although that is easily forgotten because of the Minneapolis Miracle. But Forbath made a long clutch kick late in that game. He made some other kicks. He did miss some extra points, so that did get on Mike Zimmer's nerves. But Kai Forbath also made a bunch of big kicks in a Vikings uniform, and the Vikings had him under contract for this year. So I just know the Forbath camp, and he doesn't have any tryouts lined up as of now. The rest of this week did try out for the Jets last week, and at some point Forbath will end up with another job. But I do know the Forbath camp is scratching their heads even more so after Carlson's misses on Friday night. All right, let's get to the Wolves. I caught up with head coach / president of operations Tom Thibodeau at the State Fair on Monday afternoon. Coaches, the State Fair almost like an unofficial start of the season. And next thing you know, all the guys will be back in town, and next thing you know, it's training camp.
It is. It's symbolic of the end of the summer, then the craziness of everyone being out here. This is such a big part of the fabric of the state, and it's amazing. It's hard to describe. I was trying to describe it to my nephew last week, and there's no way to describe it. Just so many people and people watching, the food, the rides, the music. It's pretty amazing. So, and you're right. It also marks once we get past Labor Day, the players are back and we're up and running.
You know, a lot of people are going to stop you out here. When people stop you, whether it's even here or the airport, a restaurant, what inevitably comes up?
Well, the big thing is, people were excited about the team and getting to the playoffs. And obviously, when you haven't been there since 2004, I think there was a great appreciation for that. And I was obviously very proud of the team and the way they fought to get in. And now we have to, move forward off of that. And the challenge will be even greater this year with LeBron coming to the West.
Yeah, I mean, you're right about that. I mean, and you got to maintain health, right? I mean, if you look back, if you have Jimmy for those 23 games, if you don't miss Jeff, maybe you guys aren't playing Denver in that final game to get into the playoffs. You guys might have been a 3 or 4 seed.
Well, when Jimmy went down, we were a 3rd seed, and we saw how tight it was going down to the final game, and we were 1 game removed from being the 4th seed. So there's a lot of parity, and it'll be a slugfest every night. The thing that I did like is I thought the chemistry with Carl, Jimmy, and Wig was very strong. When those 3 guys played together, our record was 27-10 in the West, and that's pretty significant. So, we want to build off of that. We know we're going to have to be better this year.
Anthony Tolliver, to me, is a sneaky good signing. What about you? What do you think about Anthony?
Yeah, he was terrific down the stretch for Detroit. If you looked at his last 20 games, he played great basketball. But the challenge for us, when we looked at the season, we felt we did a lot of good things. Our starters were ranked 3rd in offensive efficiency and 7th in defensive efficiency. And our bench was 5th in offensive efficiency, but they were 30th in defensive efficiency. So we like the toughness that Tolliver brings to us, and the fact that he could shoot the 3. That's an area we want to take and make more 3s.
James Nunnally can shoot the 3 too, can he?
Yeah, that was a great pickup, I thought, for us. He shot 55% from 3 internationally last year, which was the best mark over there. And he's at a good age. He's at that 28-year-old mark, and he's gotten better every year. And he's versatile. He can play multiple positions, so we're looking forward to having him.
What sort of feedback did you get from Doc about C.J. Williams? I mean, to me, to get him on a 2-way, a guy that started games last year, I mean, that's a big-time move for a 2-way contract.
Yeah, and you're hitting on something. Obviously, I have a close relationship with Doc, and they got put into a situation where they wouldn't be able to bring him back, and he felt very strongly about him, as did we. We had him the previous summer here, so we're familiar with him, and we wanted him last year on a 2-way, but we weren't able to get that done. So we felt very fortunate to get him back. And you're right, he started a number of games and played very well for him. And he's one of those guys, he just stays ready. He's always working on his game. He's a great pro, and he's gotten better each year as well.
Is there a chance that Justin Patton gets cleared for training camp?
We're hopeful. We're taking it real slow with him this summer. He's doing very well. and we're optimistic that he'll be ready for training camp. And and again, there's a learning curve. Basically, this will be his rookie year, but we think he has a huge upside, so we're looking forward to having him with us.
No matter when, not if, Cat signs the extension. I mean, guys don't turn down max money off rookie contracts.
Yeah, and again, I really don't want to talk about the negotiation, but obviously we feel very strongly about him, and we're optimistic that we could get it done before the season.
And then on Jimmy, is there disappointment that he turns down the extension offer?
Not really. I think if you look around the league, you see it's similar to other players that are in that position. And he's earned the right to be a free agent, but there's a benefit for him to wait also. And so we know what we have to do. We think we have a lot to offer. We think we have a big upside with our team. And I think that as time goes on, we'll have a great shot at signing him.
A full year of Derrick Rose, how beneficial will that be?
That's great. I had an opportunity to go out to L.A. and spend some time with all of those guys. And Derrick, this is the first summer in the last 5 years he hasn't been doing rehab. So he's healthy and he's chomping at the bit. He's raring to go. So we're looking forward to having him. I thought that was a critical signing for us as well.
When you say L.A., I mean Derrick, Taj, I mean who was all out there? I mean, is everybody out there?
Well, just about, yeah. Taj goes back and forth between New York and L.A. Karl is out there. Jimmy's out there, and he does quite a bit of traveling. Derrick's out there. So we have quite a few guys that spend time there. Jeff Teague stays in Indianapolis. He runs his AAU program, so he's a gym rat. He's in the gym every day. So sometimes with the older guys, you have to go out to find them, and that's fine. Andrew's in and out between here and Toronto. But all the young guys have been here all summer, and they've done a great job preparing for the season.
Speaking of traveling, did you enjoy some travel this summer?
Yeah, it was great. I got back to Connecticut with my family, so we spent some time on the shore, and then I spent a little time out in L.A. Just hanging out.
And it's important to recharge the battery every summer?
No question. I think, the off season, you have your list of things to do in terms of going through the previous season, and then you add your players through the draft, free agency, then you map out the changes and new ideas that you want to add to the playbook. But then it's also important in the month of August to get away and recharge, and so I felt I was able to do that as well.
I saw some pictures of Tyus Jones the other day. I mean, he's over at Mayo Clinic Square a lot. Is he noticeably bigger, thicker? I mean, he looks like a different human being right now.
He does a great job in the off season, and he has a routine that he's here most of the summer, and then the last month he goes out to Anaheim, which is a little different. But he's in great shape, and each year he's gotten better and better. So we're looking forward. I think our depth is going to be an asset, and I think that'll be critical this year with the way the West is.
Is there some interest there in signing him to a longer-term deal? I mean, you guys can do that here for the next handful of weeks.
And obviously we want to, keep the good players here, but when the time comes, we'll address that.
Jimmy will be okay for training camp with the hand surgery?
Yeah, actually, and I think you guys know Jimmy a little bit. Each year, Jimmy's come back with something significant where he's added to his game. And so he's worked extremely hard on his left, and he's added a few other moves, so we're looking forward to the season. And, of course, health is the big thing for all of us.
Go-to food?
Well, you have to have the cookies. I'm still I want to try the pork chop on a stick. That's a must. And I think that's where I am right now. I want those two things.
Somebody chiming in there at the end asking Tibbs about his go-to food since we connected with Tibbs at the State Fair. And I get it. Maybe I'm biased because I had C.J. Williams on the podcast a few weeks ago. I still think that is a really good signing, but I fully get it that he has a long way to go to actually crack the rotation. So even though he started 17 games last year for the Clippers, the Wolves got him somehow on a two-way, not a standard contract, but a two-way contract. Even so, he has a long way to go. I like his chances, but he's got a long way to go to actually crack Tibbs's rotation. So maybe I got a little excited there talking to Tibbs about C.J. Williams. On Cat, I take Tibbs at face value. I've been saying for weeks I'm a broken record, so I'm glad Tibbs said something publicly. The expectation remains that Cat is signing the 5-year max extension, which will contain the language that if he makes All-NBA again next summer, 2 consecutive years of making All-NBA, that he gets a $30 million bump. The Wolves are willing to do that. So I'm just telling you, the expectation remains that Karl-Anthony Towns, before the deadline in mid-October, will sign the 5-year max extension The news came out on Monday afternoon that the Wolves invited Deng Adel of Louisville to training camp. He signed a training camp contract, I am told. Just to add on to the story, he recently worked out for the Wolves. He's a wing who they feel like has some potential. Probably ends up in the G League, maybe for the Iowa Wolves. That would be the hope, the Iowa Wolves. They want him with the Iowa Wolves, but just a name to remember, Deng Adel of Louisville. Gorgui Dieng is expected to play for Senegal. I mentioned in episode 169 that he was on the fence. He is listed on their roster. I said that somebody close to him said he's still up in the air. Another person close to the situation said, yeah, he is playing. The expectation is, at least from the Senegal side, is Gorgui Dieng will play for them in their World Cup qualifying games the weekend of September 14th.
You knew the risks when you decided to drive drunk. There could be a crash. People could get hurt or killed. But that didn't stop you, did it? You knew you could get arrested. You could incur huge legal expenses, and you could possibly even lose your job. You were well aware of the consequences of driving drunk. But one thing's for sure. You were wrong when you said it was no big deal. Drive sober or get pulled over. This message brought to you by NHTSA.
What else do I want to get to? I did catch up with Bob Motzko, Kelly Roisland, and Carly Thibault-Dudanis at the State Fair on Monday. I think I will save those conversations for episode 171. I can say on the Gophers men's hockey front, the first team meeting will be next Tuesday. Then practice begins soon thereafter. Scott Bell left for the Maple Leafs. The situation there is Scott was okay to stay for the year, but Motzko couldn't make any assurances beyond the 1 year. Bell got all sorts of assurances that he could be with the Maple Leafs for multiple years. So Scott Bell was looking at the long-term situation, his professional situation, unsure if he would be here with the Gophers for the 2019-2020 season. So he jumped on the opportunity to join the Maple Leafs organization. So Motzko has an assistant coach spot to fill. Look for a hire to happen in the next week. So by the time they have that team meeting, at least what Motzko said on Monday at the fair, that he is moving toward finalizing a hire. What else did I write down on the Gophers football front? As of Sunday, there were about 6,000 tickets left for Thursday's opener against New Mexico State. They are running ads everywhere. So if you're thinking about going to the game, trust me, it won't cost you all that much money. They are hoping for a sellout, but right now some disappointment with so many tickets remaining. I will play a clip that I tweeted out the other day. PJ Fleck met with a few of us. Actually, I wasn't there, but he met with our Channel 5 cameraman on Sunday afternoon. He was asked about a year into his Gophers tenure, how much the row the boat message resonates. And here was his lengthy response. I thought it was a great response. So I want to play that here on my podcast.
To think back, it was one thought. It was that stemmed from adversity that took a while to develop. That when I kind of unveiled it, everybody made fun of it, and people still do. But at the end of the day, that's always going to happen when you sit there and say, here I am as a person, and you share yourself with other people instead of closing yourself off. And when you have something like Row the Boat and you share that with everybody else, not only that, you attach it to your football program so everybody else can look at your football program, not only just a football program, but something that can inspire and motivate others who don't have anything to do with football. And to hear these stories that inspire people, and to hear what our program is, what that one thought was and that one slogan was years ago, and what it's about, to see that inspire and motivate other people to be better, to not give up, whether people have lost somebody or have been through and beat it, to be able to either celebrate and create a foundation, create a fund, live somehow in memory of that person, or celebrate that person still being here, through that type of never give up attitude. It's inspiring. It is. And I told you before that as a football coach, we have a platform. And what you do with that platform is very powerful. You have a message. And whatever you decide to share that message to other people, that's your decision. We decide to say, okay, yes, wins and losses are going to be judged on me as a football coach. But me as a person and somebody who's a public figure, I want to be looked at as somebody who can bring hope and motivation and inspiration to families who are dealing with things that maybe they have nowhere else to turn. Maybe they need something else. They need a jump start. And if they can look at our program, then we're doing our job. Then I'm doing my job as a head football coach. Because I know not only just people around our state and all over the country who have emailed and tweeted and direct messaged and sent things. And I get more mail than I've ever imagined. I spend more time writing letters back half the time than I'm sitting there going, man, at some point I got to watch some film here. But if they're going to write me, I'm going to write them back. And that's a powerful message. And when you walk down our tunnel and you see all those oars and we're rotating those, that's inspiring. You know you're making a difference.
Powerful words from Gophers head coach P.J. Fleck, especially when you think about the happenings at Maryland, at Ohio State. And not to say that, hey, the Gophers won't have any more issues. We've known that they've had issues, right? I mean, not just football, other sports. So inevitably something will pop up. But when you think about just the seriousness of what's taking place at the University of Maryland, at the University of Ohio State, the Ohio State University, however they want to call themselves, whatever. I mean, it's despicable. It's disgusting. It is, heck, a young man lost his life at the University of Maryland. I just think it means something that P.J. Fleck runs things the right way. And again, there will be adversity. There will be hurdles. There will be a player or two in the news for the wrong reasons at some point. It might be a year from now, 2 years from now. It's just the way it is when there's over 100 players. But P.J. Fleck does things the right way. He's a man of integrity. I just think it matters. So I wanted to play that message when he talks about a year later how Row the Boat resonates here in Minnesota, him bringing that powerful message and what it means. And after he lost his infant son many years ago, just what it means as he has now transitioned here to Minnesota now that he's been here almost 18 months. Also on Gophers football, Seth Green, if it ever got to the situation of the Gophers needing a third quarterback, P.J. Fleck was asked about that on Sunday. He said, I don't want to tell you. The belief is that Seth Green, if they had to, boy, they would be in a tough spot if Annexstad and Morgan went down. But if need be, Seth Green could slide in and play quarterback. What else did I write down? I saw John Rothstein's tweet on Monday about Amir Coffey getting cleared. It got some traction, retweets and likes. I mean, it's what we've been talking about here on the podcast going back a number of weeks. I mean, when the Gophers were practicing throughout the summer, Amir was practicing. I mean, heck, they were using him at point guard. They did have a situation where they were trying to limit or even take out any contact, but he was always trending the right way. I mean, he was shooting, he was going through drills, he was practicing with the team. So, of course, now, you know, as we talk now 4, 5, 6 weeks later, yeah, I mean, he's ready for contact. He's ready to go when they start practicing here in a few weeks. So definitely not a surprise. On Zeke Nnaji, he visits Purdue Monday, Illinois Tuesday. Then before the week is over, UCLA and Arizona. Recently visited Ohio State. At Ohio State, he hung out with Wolves rookie Keita Bates-Diop. He also visited Indiana. He visited Notre Dame a couple weeks ago. He visited Kansas State and Creighton. He'll visit Kansas soon as he attempts to whittle down his list. He's got over 20-something scholarship offers. Zeke Nnaji, Hopkins High School forward, class of 2019. The ESPN rankings were updated on Monday. I saw he was ranked number 37 nationally in the class of 2019. The Gophers want him badly. The Badgers want him badly. He's expected to make up his mind sometime before Hopkins' season begins in November. I have a few more notes, including a recruit that the Gophers men's basketball team called on Monday, but let me give some love to Skyline Specs. They also keep the Scoop podcast going. Skyline Specs is an urban lifestyle brand that connects people to the Twin Cities community. They are a local student startup that does this by engraving major city skylines, such as Minneapolis and St. Paul, on the sides of their premium wooden sunglasses. They offer a variety of polarized styles that you are sure to love. Use promo code MN for 15% off. The website is skylinespecs.com. Skyline, S-P-E-C-S, specs.com. Skyline Specs. Rob Jeter, Gophers men's basketball assistant coach, reached out on Jalen Suggs, stud from Minnehaha Academy, class of 2020. Speaking of Minnehaha Academy, so Jace Frederick, who does great work for the Pioneer Press, sent me a note on Monday afternoon. He's working on a feature story about the Division I football players for SMB. It's Minnehaha Academy, St. Paul Academy, and Blake. Terry Lockett, big-time wide receiver. He's got offers from the Gophers, Iowa, Nebraska. The offer list will grow and grow. He's got a D1 basketball offer from Hampton. So I was at the school a couple weeks ago interviewing Terry, and among questions I asked him was just about how excited he was for this season, playing for SMB. He talked about how much he thinks that they can go undefeated. Well, it turns out he knew then when he talked to me on August 13th that he was moving to Ohio. He is now officially in Ohio. He's no longer on the SMB football team, moved to Ohio to go to a prep school. So that SMB football team with Caden Johnson, Jalen Suggs, Craig McDonald, and Terry Lockett no longer has Lockett. They still have 3 players with Big Ten offers. McDonald should get a Gophers offer at some point. I don't know if they will. I think they should have offered him already, but that's my bias. But he has an Iowa offer. Jalen Suggs has any number of football and basketball offers. He's going to play basketball at the D1 level. Then Caden Johnson went to Ohio State camp this summer, has a Nebraska offer, a Badgers offer, and a Gophers offer. A big-time linebacker in the class of 2020. But definitely interesting that Terry Lockett leaving Minnehaha Academy to go to a prep school in Ohio. I hope to connect with Ryan Suter in the next week or two as he continues his rehab. But I just know from correspondence with him that he is doing fantastic. The doctors may hold him back. The trainers may hold him back when training camp starts here in a couple weeks. But he feels like he'll be good to go come the regular season. You think about that serious injury he suffered at the end of the regular season not that long ago. Ryan Suter is an absolute freak of a human being. He is healing tremendously well. On the Twins front, remember that Thad Levine was on Scoop Podcast episode 168 early last week. He said this week, Brad Stile, who runs their pro scouting department, was bringing in some scouts. They were going to start mapping out a plan to scout pending free agents, so that will take place this week. Next week, the Twins won't call up any guys on September 1st. They will wait for the AAA season to end. So we're looking at like next Monday or Tuesday. So we'll keep an eye on Byron Buxton, Nick Anderson, and others that will get the call up when the Twins roster, Major League Baseball rosters, expand from 25 players. You can go as high as 40. Typically nobody goes that high. Heck, you wouldn't have a reason to go that high, but you will bring in a couple extra pitchers, a couple other guys that you want to take a look at in the month of September as rosters expand. I'm looking, did I jot down anything else? I mentioned Motzko, Roisland, Tebow, that I'll bring those to you, those conversations to you next time I record a Scoop podcast, which might be a few days away, might be Saturday, might actually be as we flip the calendar from August to September. I don't think I have anything else overly pressing. If I do, I'll tweet at D Wolfson KSTP. Oh, that's right. I have the teams that will be at TCF Bank Stadium for Gophers and New Mexico State on Thursday night. Let me find it here. Here are the NFL scouts that will be at the Gophers New Mexico State game on Thursday night. Rams, Ravens, Cowboys, Jets. The Bills will have 2 scouts there. The 49ers and the Vikings. The Vikings will have 4 scouts at Gophers New Mexico State on Thursday night. So 11 total scouts from the NFL will be at the Gophers and New Mexico State game, TCF Bank Stadium, 6 p.m. on Thursday night. If I have anything else that I forgot because I just scribble some notes as I record this in between some TV duties, if I have anything that hits me, I'll tweet at D Wolfson KSTP. That'll do it for Scoop Podcast episode 170. Always appreciate you listening.
You knew the risks when you decided to drive drunk. There could be a crash. People could get hurt or killed. But that didn't stop you, did it? You knew you could get arrested. You could incur huge legal expenses, and you could possibly even lose your job. You were well aware of the consequences of driving drunk. But one thing's for sure. You were wrong when you said it was no big deal. Drive sober or get pulled over. This message brought to you by NHTSA.
I'm Rita Foley with an AP News Minute. Defense Secretary Jim Mattis was there to greet the McCain family last night as Senator and war hero John McCain's body was flown to a military base outside Washington. Today, McCain's body will lie in state under the Capitol Rotunda. AP Washington correspondent Sagar Magani.
After a memorial service yesterday in his adopted home of Arizona, a military jet flew McCain's body east to Joint Base Andrews, where he was greeted with an Armed Forces tribute. He's now lying in state at the U.S. Capitol, where he's served for so many years, and where the public will be allowed to file in on what's expected to be a stormy day here in Washington. McCain will be buried Sunday.
Ariana Grande and Stevie Wonder will sing, and former President Clinton will speak at Aretha Franklin's funeral today in Detroit. But organizers promise this will be a service, not a show. An American man's pleaded not guilty to assault in Uganda after video footage showed him punching a hotel worker. I'm Rita Foley.